Chair offers up committee substitute to House Bill 791.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The First Amendment secures the freedom of speech, of religion, and of the press. But another right that it protects is just as important as those others, the right of people to peacefully assemble. Our democracy relies on us being able to gather together to express our views on the issues that are important to us. And for us to do that successfully, we need to feel safe, secure, and free from intimidation. The State Department of Public Safety recognized this when they set out the rules that govern protests right here at the Capitol. Some people, the department noted in a press release, seek violent confrontations during protests. To secure the safety of the legitimate demonstrators, then, DPS requires that certain items be prohibited from the Capitol grounds. These items include any metal, plastic, or wood objects longer than 12 inches. Why would the agency ban long wooden or metal objects? Because someone could use one of these as a weapon. This would have the effect of intimidating or even silencing any demonstrators. But if such a weapon is too dangerous or intimidating for a protest at the Capitol, then allowing a firearm at the same event should be out of the question. Indeed, as it turns out, the DPS policy does allow for the banning of guns from demonstrations at the Capitol. Now, my bill doesn't ban guns at protests, but it does ban the display of a gun at a protest. I appreciate the insight contained in the DPS policy. In potentially volatile situations in which tensions might run high, weapons should not be introduced into the mix. To ensure that people are guaranteed the right of peaceful assembly, we should ensure that no one is brandishing firearms at protesters. My bill would make it an offense to openly display a firearm within 500 feet of a public demonstration. It would allow exceptions for peace officers, members of the armed forces, and uniformed private security. Our era seems to be marked by more and more protests, whether they support Black Lives Matter or Stop the Steal. Just last summer, right here in Austin, a young man brought his semi-automatic rifle to one such protest. By all accounts, he was not a threat to anyone, but a passing driver saw him with that firearm and feared for his life. The driver killed the protester with the gun that he carried in his car. This situation likely would not have arisen had neither of these men been able to display a gun in that situation. It's crucial that anyone who wants to express themselves peacefully is allowed to do so. The presence of firearms at a demonstration intimidates demonstrators and imposes a chilling effect on free speech. By banning the display of firearms at public demonstrations, House Bill 791 promotes these First Amendment liberties and protects a vital aspect of our democracy. I'm pleased to have support from law enforcement on this bill. The Texas Police Chiefs Association supports House Bill 791. Their immediate past president, Chief Stan Standridge of San Marcos, is unable to testify tonight, but has written a letter in favor of the bill, as well as my own Chief Todd Radford from the Lakeway Police Department, who has also written a letter, and I believe my staff provided a copy of the letters. I'm offering a committee substitute. It's been brought to my attention that the bill is filed only excluded one type of uniformed private security from the bill's general prohibition, when in fact there are two relevant types. So the substitute just makes a small change to exclude both types. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions at this time and respectfully reserve the right to close.
Okay, you have that right to close. Let's check and make sure there are any questions. We don't see any questions at this time. Let's go ahead and get our witnesses up. Brandon Burkhart, Ramon Garza, and Lamar Henry. You are
Brandon Burkhart.
Okay, so after Mr. Burkhart, we'll have Ramon Garza, Lamar Henry, Michelle Mostert, Rick Briscoe.
Good evening, Chair and committee. My name is Brandon Burkhart, president of This is Texas Freedom Force, and we are completely opposed to this bill whatsoever. I'll tell you a couple of things. First of all, the reason that the young man that got shot that you were talking about was because they were banging on his car here in Austin, and he felt threatened, and that's why he returned fire from his car. He didn't have the gun on display inside the car. The guy that was on the other side did, but he was not well trained. And for that matter, I'd just like to say, we work on the preservation of Texas history. We're backing Open Carry Texas up here today. We usually work on monuments and stuff like that. We've had frozen water bottles thrown at us. We've had rocks thrown at us. We've had the lasers pointed at us. We've had all this stuff that's happened all over the state of Texas. We've held our ground on over about 14, maybe 15 monuments here in the great state of Texas. And the BLM, Antifa, and others are the ones that are doing these threats towards us. But when we have those firearms present, when we are surrounding those monuments, they know better than to try to escalate it to the point to where it gets to physical force. Never once have we had to discharge a firearm towards them. And I feel like this bill is also making us choose between the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. You can't do that. What about Open Carry Texas that works on gun rights, the ones that we're here to back up today? They have open carry walks and stuff like that. You just can't do that. I mean, the guns are actually there for the safety of everybody. And, you know, when we heard about this bill that was being filed, and with all due respect, this is just, it can't go on. The Alamo wouldn't stand today without us having those guns there. How are we supposed to hold off? And I told y'all it was 4,000 the last time. I got the chief of police to correct me. It was 5,000 rioters and looters that were trying to get to the Alamo to vandalize it and burn it down. So we need those firearms there to keep the peace. It actually does help to have there. Nobody's pointing them at anybody. In fact, our guys goes through rigorous training of urban combat training that we make sure that everybody's up to speed, because we have a lot of veterans in our organization. We have a lot of former law enforcement in our organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, thank you. Chair calls Ramon Garza, then Lamar Henry, Michelle Mostert.
Try to get this down again. I'll stay right here. Good evening, Chairman White, committee members. My name is Ramon Garza. I'm the outreach director for this Texas Freedom Force. I speak on behalf of many of our members that can't be here, and we definitely do oppose this bill. Brandon, he hit a lot of subject matter that I wanted to hit. But I wanted to make sure, let everybody know that our organization, like Brandon says, first and foremost, we protect our history, Texas history. That's mission number one. Mission number two is Texans' rights. And that's why we're here today, to protect Texans' rights. Now, this bill, exactly what it does, it is attacking the rights of us, our rights that we have as Texans. And the thing is this, not only does it attack our rights, but it attacks the rights of responsible Texans. Brandon's actually absolutely correct. And I think the last time we met here, I did make the statement that our members do carry our firearms, not for intimidation, but to protect ourselves. And again, it's our right to do that. Myself, I'm a veteran. We have another veteran that's here. Many of our members are veterans, male and female, I might add. Law enforcement agencies. You know, I said before, we work well with them. I've never had one law enforcement agency that spoke against us. Whenever we go to have an event, we reach out to law enforcement agencies before we show up. And this is not just a day before, it's months before. We do plan and we tell the law enforcement agency, whether it's the sheriff or the chief or whoever, this is what we're gonna do, this is how long we're gonna be in your area, and then we're gonna leave. Every time it's been peaceful, except the time we were at the Alamo.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Chair recognizes Lamar Henry. Then we'll have Michelle Mostert and then Rick Briscoe.
Good morning. My name is Lamar Henry. I'm speaking for myself and also as Vice President of This is Texas Freedom Force. I'm adamantly opposed to this bill. It does nothing to address violent crime. And like others, bills of this kind, gun control bills, it only targets law-abiding citizens. It does nothing to fight crime whatsoever. I've sat here for 12 hours listening to all of this gun control stuff, and it's just the same thing you hear day after day after day. It does nothing to fight crime. It targets law-abiding citizens that have every right to have the guns that they have. You know, and it gets a little bit tiresome to even hear it. The criminal use of long guns, for instance, is pretty minimal, actually, when you look at how many people own guns and how many use them, you know, for hunting or whatever they use them for, you know. And at times when there's an assembly of armed citizens like we do sometimes, it's a proven fact that there is not any violence. Of all of the times that we've ever been at rallies and all this stuff, not one time has there ever been any violence from us or anybody else. And I'll tell you why that is because the presence of our guns actually keeps the peace. If we did not have those guns, there'd be a lot more violence occurring with the people that we encounter, which are the ones that do looting and burning and things like that. But they don't do that much when they encounter us. And we're not using those guns, you know, to be shooting at them. The only time that would ever occur, and it hasn't, would be when we have to use them for self-defense. I guess you could call it an intimidation factor. Well, that's a good thing. It keeps the peace. A lot of times we have pieces to keep the peace.
Lamar.
That's what it amounts to.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Thank you. And members, thank you very much, Mr.
Okay.
Henry.
Thank you.
Michelle Mostert, then Rick Briscoe, and Emily Taylor, John Bolgiano, and Dylan Price.
Hi, Chair White and the committee. Thank you again. I am very much opposed to this bill. I am one of those that was a protester every Saturday at the Capitol. And if it wasn't for someone like him, we would have been, I'm sure, physically attacked by Antifa and BLM. They would taunt us from across the street. And there were several gentlemen like Brad there that had their guns just on their body. They weren't pointing at anybody. But I'm sure that's the reason they did not do more than what they did. And, you know, as far as seeing news clips on it, you know, media will take a little piece of something and make it this big and turn it into something it wasn't. I never saw anyone get hurt. Nobody got, you know, there was no fist fights, nothing. There may have been some screaming, but that was about it. But I'm sure that those guns had something to do with it. It kept them, you know, kept them at bay.
Members.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Rick Briscoe.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you. I'm Rick Briscoe, representing Open Carry, Texas, speaking against the bill. With all due respect to the bill author, there's so many fallacies in it, I barely know where to begin. I guess I'll start at the basics. We do not have a democracy. Our Texas Constitution assures us a Republican form of government. And We are not a democracy because in a republic, a 51% majority does not get to take away the rights of everyone else. There are a couple of problems with the whole concept. The term brandishing and displaying seem to be used interchangeably. Brandishing, number one, is poorly defined in the law. People who are intimidated by the sight of a firearm, that's just unfortunate, but that's their personal problem. When a person is doing nothing wrong with it, they have every right under law to bear it. The DPS has actually exceeded their constitutional authority in restricting items on the general grounds of the Capitol. Our Constitution grants the sole exclusive non-delegable power to do so to the legislature, not DPS. They are not a legislative body. The concept of restricting people from exercising their First Amendment rights while armed, it obviously has a chilling effect upon their ability to exercise their First Amendment rights. Quite the reverse of what the bill author asserts. Our organization, as many of you probably know, is known for lawfully, peacefully carrying arms while exercising our First Amendment rights, educating members of the public on what their rights are. We have, for example, held a walk through the municipality of Almas Park. Nearly 600 armed citizens assembled peacefully and presented our petition for redress of grievances and then went home.
Okay.
And as such, we must oppose this bill because the restrictions it would impose upon us of the exercise of our rights. Thank you, sir.
Members, thank you, Rick. The chair calls Emily Taylor. She's still here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Emily Taylor. I represent myself, and I am testifying against this bill. There are several things that are legally problematic in it. One is an overly broad definition of public demonstration. It's defined here as one or more persons essentially doing something to attract the attention of the public. So potentially, the man on the street corner in the tinfoil hat holding up a sign that says "the end is near" has now caused an LTC holder openly carrying his pistol to be charged with a Class B misdemeanor, arrested, convicted, and lose his LTC for up to 7 years. Now, I understand there is a defense to prosecution in this bill, but really, unfortunately, it is a defense to prosecution, not a defense to arrest. And just as a reminder to the committee members, a Class B misdemeanor is punishable by up to 6 months in the county jail, up to a $2,000 fine, or both, plus a loss of your LTC for 7 years, which I think I already mentioned. The mens rea here, right? So essentially what we've done is create roving gun-free zones for whenever you encounter one person who's trying to get the attention of the public. The mens rea here is not intentionally or knowingly put yourself in a public demonstration, but intentionally or knowingly openly carried that weapon. And so you can unintentionally stumble into one of these public demonstrations, which is overly broad, and be liable under this bill, which is an issue for all LTC holders. Finally, and I won't belabor this point because it has been mentioned, but the safe display of firearms has been a form of free speech in Texas for many, many years. Like flag burning, that offends some people. Offense is not a reason to limit our First Amendment rights.
Members, thank you, ma'am. John Bolgiano, and as John is making his way here, we'll have Dylan Price, Gary Zimmerman, Cody Ryan, Kyle Gorko.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice, members of the committee. My name is John Bolgiano, representing myself, speaking in opposition to House Bill 791. Got a couple problems with this bill. The first being it doesn't really distinguish between who is participating in a demonstration or someone who is somehow within the magical 30-07 sign that has circular shape, I'm guessing, and a diameter of over 3 football fields. It's Doesn't make sense to me, I'm sorry. Second thing, and I have a bigger problem with this bill would prohibit me from standing alongside my neighbors to protect our community from wanton violence. We saw over the past summer that mostly peaceful demonstrators can suddenly erupt in arson and looting. If our slung rifles are enough to send the message of not here, not today, if our armed presence is enough for a potential troublemaker to decide to keep walking, then I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dylan Price, he is registered against House Bill 791. Gary Zimmerman. After Gary Zimmerman, we'll have Cody Ryan, Guy Guarco.
My name is Gary Zimmerman. I'm representing myself, and I am against this bill. My two main concerns. Number one, what if there's a demonstration march and they're walking down the front of my house? I have a right to have a gun in my house or on my front yard. I could be sitting out in my front yard enjoying a cup of coffee for morning. Maybe there's a march, a demonstration march marching down my street. If I'm open carrying with my weapon on my side, that's within 500 feet of the street. Am I going to be guilty of this law? That's not right if I'm guilty of a law for me being on my own property, sitting there having a cup of coffee when the march comes marching down the street. That's not right. What if I'm on my motorcycle, open carrying, perfectly legal, driving down the street? DFW, where I'm from, is huge. Austin, San Antonio is huge. Since I'm not from here, I don't really know the area. But what if I'm cruising around, just enjoying the sights, maybe looking for the Capitol or many of the historic sites in Austin, San Antonio, DFW, and I just happen to make a right turn and whoops, there all of a sudden is a demonstration. Am I going to be guilty of the crime because, oops, I took a wrong turn and now there's a demonstration there that I wasn't aware of? That's totally different than if I was intentionally trying to find a demonstration. I'm talking about when I'm driving along, accidentally find one, or maybe they're walking in front of my home. That's the concern I have, because I have a right to be in my home, to protect my home, to sit on the front porch, have a cup of coffee, and sit there with my gun on me on my front porch. I should not be found guilty of a crime just because the march and demonstration's walking down my street.
We're going to get you back home for that cup of coffee this morning, bro.
Thank you.
Okay.
And you have a great day.
You too. Okay. Cody Ryan is, okay, it's Cody Ryan. Chair calls Cody. He's not here. He registered against. Kyle Guarco. Kyle Guarco registered against. Bradley Hodges. After Bradley Hodges, we'll have Donald Dahl, Marcia Strickler.
Brad Hodges against, and self. I'm not feeling the freedom and liberty with this bill. 791 puts claim on access to enumerated individual right for the purpose to create a criminal offense. I respectfully present a point of information for consideration on 791 to the dais, to the chair. Where is the claimed criminal action? 791 acts to cancel foundation principles of Texas independence and sovereignty as enumerated and affirmed and codified in our Bill of Individual Rights. As per Article 1, Section 10 of our Bill of Rights, can the chair make a determination of the hypothesized mens rea of the accused, the guilty mind, the specified nature of the criminality identified, the presumptive harm done thereby, the nature and scope of the injury inflicted, the particular harmed victim so injured, and the remedy therefore demanded? And if not able to specify any of those elements, then why not? I was out front every Saturday for 2 months, assembled 4 free and fair elections and in opposition to the most secure stolen election in history. We policed ourselves for the majority of that time with the help of DPS, with no fracas, okay? I'm here assembled again for our free and independent republic and in opposition to demands to cancel our Bill of Individual Rights. I reject the hypothesis behind this bill on the grounds of overt lack of a legitimate lawful authority and on the grounds of malicious intent to cancel our Bill of Rights. That's the real criminal offense taking place before us all. So I'm going to respectfully submit myself for questions to the board as a subject matter expert on exactly what this bill is written about.
Members, thank you, sir. Mr. Donald Dahl, then we have Marcia Strickler and Elva Mendoza.
Hi, I'm Donald Dahl. I represent myself. I am greatly opposed to this bill. First of all, 500 feet? I mean, I could be walking down the street over here, open carry, and you could have a demonstration up on the steps of the Capitol, and I violated that law, and I may not have even known I violated the law. And what happens if there is a protest and I'm coming in to do business in the Capitol, open carrying a pistol? Legal to do. I mean, we could have violated the law one day. One Saturday, we had about 250 gun owners down here at the Capitol, up here at the North Steps before the COVID tests were out there on one Saturday. Just about everybody open carrying. We would have violated our own law, having our own protest and open carrying at our own protest. I'm sorry, this is just a bad bill. Just, it needs to die. Thank you.
Members, thank you. Marcia Strickler,
It's a difficult name.
or Marcia?
It's Marcia.
Marcia Strickler.
Williamson
Okay.
County.
Okay, yes, Val.
Wilco, we the people.
Wilco, we the people.
Yes, sir. I am opposed to this bill. Help me understand what a public demonstration is. It looks to me like right now we are in a public demonstration, and I see very many people here that are open carrying. Are they breaking the law with this bill right this minute? When I go to church and I open carry, am I breaking this law? When I go to the farmer's market, am I breaking the law? When I go to my rodeo, yes, I'm a rodeo queen. When I open carry in that rodeo, am I breaking the law? Public demonstration. Let me remind you what our forefathers said about our Bill of Rights, our First and Second Amendment rights. We, the people, will never give up our firearms. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is, as a last resort, to protect themselves against tyranny in government. I will always vote on the side of freedom and on our right to keep and bear arms. I will continue to stand up, show up, and speak up. I have been testifying all day on election integrity, sir, and I'm tired.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elva Mendoza. After Elva Mendoza, we'll have Melanie Brooks, then Heather Kennedy.
Good morning. My name is Elva Mendoza. I'm representing Moms Demand Action and myself as a native Texan, a public health social worker, and a mother in support of HB 791. Restricting the carrying of firearms at demonstrations is constitutional, increases safety, and protects free speech. First, the Supreme Court in their Heller decision made it clear reasonable restrictions on the right to bear arms are indeed consistent with the Constitution. For example, my 13-year-old son cannot carry a fully automatic weapon to school. The restrictions that prohibit him from doing so are both constitutional and common sense. We've long restricted guns from sensitive areas like airports and courtrooms. We need to recognize demonstrations or sensitive places due to the potential for conflict. Psychologists have found the mere sight of a weapon, any weapon really, increases human aggression and escalates situations. We're at an extremely divided point in our nation's history. We've seen a rise in hate crimes and violent extremism. I can think of at least 2 separate fatal shootings that occurred during last summer's protests in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. And of course, we saw armed extremists storming the capital of Michigan and even our national capital, resulting in several deaths. The last thing we need living in a powder keg is a match. I cherish and exercise my First Amendment rights. I've spoken in front of this committee, I've organized rallies at this Capitol, and I've attended peaceful marches in Washington, D.C., full of hundreds of thousands of people. I've been proud to bring my 3 young children along with me to many of these rallies and protests, and they've learned that when we see injustice or things that just aren't right, we need to peacefully use our voices to seek a more perfect union. But the increasing presence of armed individuals at protests intent on chilling the speech of others gives me second thoughts about attending demonstrations myself and has convinced me to leave my children at home. As I alluded to earlier, guns intensify violent encounters. Guns have no place at demonstrations, especially not openly carried guns, and other places where passions run high. We've seen people killed that way. Texas has seen way too many gun deaths in recent years, and just today, and they just seem to be getting more numerous as we keep loosening restrictions session after session. Please do the right thing and keep guns away from protests. I thank you, and I want to add just on a personal note, we're hearing a lot about, well, these are, the good guys with guns. These are protecting other folks. It's important to remember that good guys with guns are sometimes good guys up until the moment they pull the trigger. One of the OTC, or Open Carry Texas members, was actually convicted of murder. She murdered 2 of her family members, I believe. And I'm sure, the group doesn't support that at all, but these things do happen. People make bad choices, and no group is immune from that. So I just want to make sure that we're listening to these individuals with the caveat, and also that we listen to law enforcement and what they're saying, because I trust them, honestly, more than some of the folks in this room, personally.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Melanie Brooks. Melanie Brooks, registered against. Heather Kennedy. Heather Kennedy, registered against. Oh, here she is. Okay.
Register for?
Heather Kennedy,
Yes.
registered for.
Yes.
But go ahead and state
Okay,
your name,
yeah.
your position, and
My name's Heather Kennedy. I am for House Bill 791, and I'm representing myself. I'll start with a quote from a universally loved and respected American. When a man carries a gun all the time, the respect he thinks he's getting might really be fear. So I don't carry a gun because I don't want the people of Mayberry to fear a gun. I'd rather they respect me. That was Sheriff Andy Taylor on the Andy Griffith Show, Season 5, Episode 23. I'm a screenwriter, so I tend to relate more to movies and TV than research and numbers. But what Sheriff Andy's getting at here is that the simple display of a gun creates a power imbalance, however unintentional, that dampens civil discourse. I've exercised my First Amendment right peaceably to assemble a number of times over the years. Speaking only for myself, when I've seen people displaying their guns on these occasions, I feel neither fear nor respect, but others are not so lucky. 58% of American adults report that they or someone they care for has experienced gun violence in their lifetime. The sight of a gun can unnecessarily stir up a variety of painful emotions and re-traumatize victims and survivors of gun violence. It is not incumbent on these people to just get over it or learn more about guns. The Second Amendment gives people the right to bear arms, but it doesn't require it. Just like the First Amendment gives people the right to free speech, but they are also welcome to not exercise it. If opponents of this bill wish to argue that safety is the issue, I don't see any language that would prevent them from carrying a concealed firearm in these spaces. However, if they insist on being allowed to open carry at or near a protest, then I have every reason to believe they are doing so in a manner calculated to alarm, which is a subjective and therefore useless phrase. This bill would simply apply an objective framework by clarifying at least one scenario where any display of a firearm is likely to create alarm. In closing, if any of the permitless carry bills pass this session, we won't have a way to know whether someone displaying a firearm near a protest or rally is legally allowed to possess it, or if they even know how to use it. Thank you.
Members, thank you, ma'am. Chair calls Amy Mobley Turney, registered 4. Let's go to Andy Turner. After Andy Turner, we'll have Jill Switzer, then Rachel Malone, John Brandt, Leonard Perez.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Andy Turner for the Texas State Rifle Association. We stand in firm opposition to this bill. There is actually already a law in the disorderly conduct statute that makes it a crime to alarm a person or persons by brandishing their firearm. The bill as written is problematic. Again, somebody did bring up what is a public demonstration, but under the terms of this bill, it could be one person, one single person. What it says in the bill, one or more persons who are in a public place expressing themselves and could attract attention. So it's kind of hard, and I think that might be difficult for law enforcement, particularly, let's say you're sitting at a patio cafe having your lunch and you've got your gun, you've got your LTC, you've got your gun on your hip, and you're having lunch. And somebody walks by with a sign. What do you do? Do you get up and leave the restaurant? Do you stay put and wait for them to go by? What if there's a law enforcement officer there? What decision does he make? It's not very clear. And so then we get into the roving gun-free zones. The bill is very vague and frankly, yes, as was pointed out, it places one constitutional right over the other, and that shouldn't be happening, in my opinion.
Members, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Switzer, Rachel Malone, John Brandt.
Hello, Jill Switzer. I'm representing Texas Gun Sense, and we are in support of this bill. We thank Representative Goodwin for authoring this bill as a way to make Texans safer, and she happens to be my representative. Just a few comments is I see this bill as one way of protecting law enforcement in the sense that a fraught situation, there are not guns visible and intimidating other folks. It allows for free speech without intimidation by firearms for protesters on any side of any issue. Other states and localities have set the precedent and introduced laws that do the same thing that we can learn from. Excuse me. A few things is, yes, I agree, there's often a tension between the First and Second Amendment, and I think this bill bridges that tension well. First Amendment right to speak, carry your firearms, but don't show them. One reason we need this to be state legislation is because in Texas we have extreme preemption, where only the state can make laws that pertain to guns. Localities cannot. It worries me hearing folks use language like, I'm making a statement with my gun in a protest. I would say, yes, you are, and I'm not sure that the statement is one of peace and conversation that we need to have around difficult issues.
One of the defense of prosecution in discharging the person's official duties, a member of the armed services of this state or United States. And I'm just thinking, in what instance would we have one member? I'm assuming they would be uniformed, or they're on leave, or they're in the reserves, or they're National Guard,
I mean,
a member, yeah.
I would leave that to Representative Goodwin to address when she closes.
Any questions, members? Thank you. Chair calls Rachel Malone, then John Brandt, Leonard Perez.
Hello, committee members. My name is Rachel Malone. I represent Gun Owners of America, and we oppose this bill. When I told my members that there was a bill filed that goes so far as to criminalize the display of a firearm when you're within 500 feet, that's over 1.5 football fields, from one person who is expressing her views in a way that is inclined to attract onlookers, they thought I was joking. They were outraged and confused. First of all, where in Austin can you see 500 feet in front of you or all around you? Second, you shouldn't have to choose. There is no inherent conflict between the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. The rights weren't designed to have to pick one right or the other. You pick what pair of shoes you're going to wear today and what right you're going to exercise today. It doesn't work like that. The only conflict would be introduced in a bill like this that creates that conflict. For all the reasons you've heard today, it's a harmful bill for Texas. Our members are outraged that it would even be considered. Please make sure you oppose this bill. Stand up for all of our rights, all of everyone's rights. And to the statement that regarding law enforcement, I just want to point out that I believe the DPS officers here in this room and in this building have done a very fine job of handling themselves and have not had any problem with the many activists and our members who come and do have open display of firearms in a very legal and safe manner. Thank you. Please oppose this bill.
Members? Chair no, they had no comments. Thank you, Rachel. Chair recognizes John Brandt, registered for, Leonard Perez, registered for as well. Against. Okay, we have one resource witness from the DPS. Members, do you have any questions for the resource witness? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else that wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 791? Public testimony is now closed.
Guns are not appropriate in all spaces. You know, there was someone who got up and said that guns aren't intimidating, and someone else who got up and said that they are intimidating. And I think it's very much on each of us as individuals whether they're intimidating or not. The bill was an attempt to allow for those of us who see long guns or handguns being displayed as intimidating. It didn't say that you cannot have guns for your own protection. I can see that there are some things that need to be tightened up. The 500 feet's probably too large of an area. One person for a protest is probably too low a number. But the point of it is that there are those people who want to bring their children to a protest or to a rally at the Capitol and don't feel safe if there are people brandishing guns. So with that, I close.
Apparently, we do have some questions. Chair recognizes Representative Tenderholt.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I know it's late.
No. Go ahead. I was just you.
I want to say something to you about this bill and about how we operate here, because people see everyone in Washington D.C. I know you, and I think you have good intentions with this bill. I really do. I don't agree. We disagree fundamentally on this. But I want people to know that here in Texas, we don't operate like we do in Washington, D.C. So I'm glad you got to lay out this bill. I fundamentally disagree with it, but people get to see us disagree respectfully with one another. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that you heard people talk and that you're willing to change the bills. And I wanted to look at you and say this to you, because we're not Washington, D.C., and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud that we can respectfully disagree. So I just wanted to say that out loud to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any questions for the author? Thank you, Representative Goodwin. The committee sub